You're listening to The Adventuring Party, talking about gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Liam.
And I'm Eoin.
And this week we are here after a long hiatus. Not intended, it was just Eoin and I are busy guys, trying to nail each other down to get these things recorded can be tricky. We are returning to the world of Rup-Up to continue out the reviews and discussions we've been having of the Enemy Within campaign. This time it is the treatment for Book 4, which is the Horned Rat and its companion book. So,
this one's interesting because the previous 3 had 20 years plus of play, more than that, pretty near 30 years of playtesting and feedback. And this one is brand new, replacing the, I would think, pretty much disdained Something Rotten in Keislev with something that's much more kind of exciting as an idea.
I guess it's kind of reinforcing that, okay, well, everybody's aware of chaos and there's all these cults and stuff, but as well as that, the Empire does have other enemies who are, I guess, they are an outside force, but they are very much undermining the Empire itself, and that is the Skaven. Not that they exist.
No, not at all. Well, actually, that's kind of a cool thing in this adventure. One of the early sections of the book is what all of the major NPCs in Middenheim believe about Skaven. And that was, I know my players who find the whole no one believes in Skaven thing pretty frustrating. We're super happy about that. There were some people who were like, yeah, there's Skaven. They met up with some dwarves and were like, there's these things called, these rat-like beastmen of the city, like Skaven. Yes, we're aware. Like, what? Yes, Skaven. We know the Skaven. You know? You guys don't. I don't get it, but you guys don't.
Like I said, I enjoyed playing that up with the dwarves. That okay? Some of them are like, yeah, bloody Racky, and some of them are like, yeah, we don't really like to talk about it too much because they've done us a lot of damage and we're not too happy about it.
Absolutely, and they got to talk to Luigi Pavarotti, and he's like, oh yes, it's a big problem, huge problem in Tilia.
They're all over the place.
Yeah, lousy with them, and they dug that, and I think that was actually a really useful section in the book. Not everyone is, not everyone is like rat man. That's crazy talk.
So I guess for people who aren't aware that the history is that okay, well, there was a massive Skaven war against the Skaven, but then Mandred, the great emperor and warrior, Mandred was an emperor, wasn't he?
Yeah, he became an emperor.
Drove the Skaven back and wiped them out to a rat or to a man. And they haven't been heard of since, so they're obviously extinct. So some people are like, well, they never really existed at all. Some people are like, maybe there's a handful of them around, but they're a disorganized rabble. And then there are people who know the actual story. Okay, there is actually a shitload of Skaven, and shouldn't be using that word. There's a ton of Skaven, and they are organized. So it varies from person to person, how much is there, how much acceptance there. But the Skaven do a lot to conceal their existence.
And if you haven't guessed by now, from the title and the fact we're talking about Skaven, this adventure is all about the Skaven.
Yeah, essentially. So the party, fresh from saving the Graf, or perhaps the Graf being murdered, and like that, they're now taking on the mantle of the. They are, pushed into service. Not pushed into service. I guess they could in theory refuse it, but then what you do, you throw the book out the window. They are set up as a commission to investigate threats to Middenheim, and they will investigate a series of mysterious things, different goings on in the city, and try to piece together what's going on.
Time to tidy up the Purple Hand, which actually my players appreciate a lot, getting a chance to finish them off in the city, track down the ringleaders. I will say, across the books, I felt that one of the things they kind of dropped the ball a little on is with regards to Purple Hand. I think they could have fleshed out them a little bit more in some areas about what Purple Handers believe and like a little more about their secret signs, because a lot of the stuff is very entertaining pantomime to do, And I think that would have been nice stuff to kind of let you as a GM round them out a bit more, because they're quite an eclectic mixture of people in it for different reasons.
Are you saying
And
that we need a purple handbook?
I'm not saying a purple handbook necessarily, but I would have liked, because they've done some stuff about the purple hand. It's spread through the books because they're a recurring threat, and their motifs are they often wear a piece of purple clothing or have a tattoo of a purple hand on their body. Like, guys, this is lacking a touch of subtlety. You know? Are there some more subtle signs I could use to indicate someone's involved in them? And it's one of the things I would have liked a little bit more. Here's what your typical purple hand person does, as part of the cult. What are they what are they up to exactly? And just a little more about the fact that are they an association trying to garner temporal power that uses the power of chaos, or are they true believers? And what's the difference? Because it varies quite a lot along the purple hand who believes what.
Yeah.
Which is probably a bit more realistic in some ways, but it would have been nice to have a bit more of a motif for it, Like the Yellow Fang are introduced in this one, and the Yellow Fang also has a bit of a dodgy, missing a front tooth, wearing that tooth on the chain bit. That's a little bit on the nose. Once you know what to look for, that's pretty obvious.
That was a bit. I did have a lot of fun with my party though, where they're nearly expecting any NPC they come across, they're staring at their mouths and trying to figure out what teeth they're missing. And it's like, guys, there isn't really proper dentistry, so somebody missing a tooth.
No, it's not a smoking gun.
Granted, there's not sugar, which would certainly help with with preventing tooth decay, but still by no means a foolproof thing.
But what I liked about it was they had a pretty concrete goal. These people are in it for when the Skaven are in charge. We will be, we will be made kings, basically. It's like that makes sense,
We'll be the honored servants on top of the cinder pile.
Basically, we will be the ones carrying the whips. And I was like, yeah, I get that. I get, that's kind of very understandable. That was good. They do a section talking about the Skaven. What they're kind of a little brief on what the Skaven are like. A little brief about a bunch of sample stats for Skaven, which again hits this problem that WFRP 4th edition has with NPC stats. That occasionally they will go, and then you fight 10 Skaven slaves. And I only have to look at one number on the Skaven slave, and I look at weapon skill, and I go, no, not a chance.
You basically just have a way of funneling advantage to the PCs.
But it's the biggest mechanical issue I have with the game is that weapon skill is just too strong, and is just too strong to defend against everything.
I mean, I guess in theory with numbers, you do have the plus 20, plus 40, but even still, your standard Skaven slave has like 25 or 35?
25 melee basic.
25 melee basic, yeah. Even with a plus 40 for outnumbering 4-1, you're still not scratching any PC in this book.
Because by this stage
they have a lot of XP.
6 to 8k XP, I'd say.
Yeah.
If they've been playing along.
I did find that myself running through this, that at certain points it was, guys, okay, we're just fast forwarding here because they're Skaven slaves. You massacre them or they leg it or both. I will let you guys narrate how the rest of this goes because otherwise, we can spend 15 minutes rolling anyway. But I know, you and I know the outcome's inevitable. Maybe they might get a lucky crit off and it'll irritate you to fix your armor. But that's about the only other outcome.
Like, that's the problem with the Storm Vermin. It's like, at least they've got halberds, so they have a chance of impaling and stuff. But I mean, other than that, it's like 55 melee polearm.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just do what I did if I went through Foundry and then every, but even still, tacking an extra 10 or 20 points up to some guys, it's not by no means guaranteed because you don't have all of the talents to back it up as well.
Exactly, it's rough. I mean, we've all had 120 weapon skill Minotaur in our past somewhere, and I mean, it's my biggest issue with the game, in terms of that opposed nature of the weapon skill test, which gets you into kind of if it's more than 20 in the difference, the other guy has a roughly 21% chance of winning the test if you're 20 down. And if you're 30 down, it's 15, and if you're roughly 15, and if you're 40 down, it's 9. and players have rerolls. So it's just like, yeah, you just don't win.
That
Bad
is a
guys just don't win tests.
total disparity to, you round the corner, there's a whole pile of archers or gunners there. And that is something that did come up. I did down, late in the game, I did down one of our players because they were around the corner, and there's a whole pile of guys there with guns, and they shot the hell out of the wizard, and that's it. They're outside of point blank, so you don't even get a dodge, and bam, 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 bam.
Yeah, but on the other hand, if you have a shield, just go block it all. And it's definitely, it's my biggest issue, especially at the higher level. It's got like, there's 10 Skaven slaves here. 10 Skaven slaves is not worth me opening a map for. 10 Skaven slaves is not worth me doing anything. It's just
the best they might do is to run away and call somebody else.
And then how long are you going to run this escalating combat of more and more Skaven coming down to be murdered?
Especially because this is one thing that comes up a couple of times, and there's a whole thing of if you're exploring the Undercity and stuff, there's a percentage chance of encountering X people or Y people, and then every time you get into a fight, then there's a chance that that if a call for help happens, that more people will turn up, and that could keep escalating and escalating and escalating. But if that escalation isn't a threat,
it's an issue.
You're kind of relying on your players going, "Oh, this is getting kind of hot here. Let's get out of here," rather than actually feeling like they need to.
Yeah, like it's definitely, I know my players, they got fixated on. They thought that an invasion was coming from the through the tunnels, and they got completely fixated on that one. And I had to very carefully kind of disentangle them from that one. Go, all right, guys, don't it's not happening immediately, I had to show them the Skaven were moving off to do something else. And they're like, weird.
Well, that's actually, I did have a lot of fun. So certainly as a GM, one of the things that I found very entertaining when running it was that the players, I felt, had no idea what the Skaven were up to.
Yeah.
Because, it's actually a relatively, convoluted thing that's going on. I guess we're all GMs here, or people who've played it or anything. So I think I can run in with the spoilers. But you have one clan is using another clan and is willing to throw them away in order to then take them over. And that's something that the PCs can see attacks and stuff happening. They're like, this doesn't make any sense. What's going on with it? And that's internal politicking to the Skaven that the PCs have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
In the meantime, the real kind of Skaven plot that's going on is that they want to build a big cannon to blow up the moon.
Yeah.
But even still, that's, I think, for quite a long time, even though you keep saying, they're going to blow up the moon, I don't think several of my players really got that that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to blow up Morsleaf.
Yeah. It is kind of tying back into the original Death in the Reich, the finish of that. That could have been stronger as well. I mean, I think one of the problems is for me, I ran Death in the Reich, and it was I described the Warpstone Meteorite as kind of basically about kind of 2 foot across.
Yeah.
So a really big Warpstone Meteorite. In this one, it's meters across.
Yeah.
And
I think that's as much because it's you want to have a big doomsday cannon.
Yeah, absolutely.
It needs to look impressive.
And but I think they should have gone back in Death of the Reich and made something special about that Warpstone Meteorite to set this one up.
It's particularly enriched or something.
Yeah, enriched or focused, or basically was a specific shape. And I would have had your man shaping it into something, a particular shape with a diagram.
It's a part of Morsleaf. It's got a resonance to the moon
itself. Or
so.
Something. There's a little more clues there to basically go, this is what they're doing. Because they're kind of not sure exactly what's going on, which is fine. But then you don't really get an opportunity for this kind of. Well, no, we'll talk about the issues with the climax later. But I think that could have been tied in a little better. But this is the hindsight of 20 years. When you're going back and saying okay, this could have been done better in terms of tying it together a little bit stronger. But to talk about the initial sections, you get appointed as a commission, and you're tidying up. You're working for the Watch Commander, and you're tidying up the Purple Hand. And this section went really well for me. The players really dug it, tracking down the Purple Hand, taking them in, finding out a bit more about them. They really enjoyed that one. And when I was playing it, I enjoyed playing it as well, just tracking them down, taking them out, one at a time, feeling like you're dismantling this cult that's bedeviled you all the way along.
I found that quite enjoyable, and it is strange because it is really essentially two different adventures in one.
Yes.
And kind of as you've taken apart the Purple Hand, then more stuff kind of starts to happen, and there's additional things that you need to look into, and it does become clear that there's another player, involved, and that's where the Skaven menace begins to become apparent.
Yes, you take down the three remaining heads of the Purple Hand, who are variously either trying to feeling guilty and willing to turn, wants someone shown dead, or basically wants to escape the city. And you thwart them all, and you may even manage to track down Gotthard von Wittgenstein and find out about what he was up to, which is not a huge amount, mainly getting kidnapped by Skaven.
It's true.
To be asked about that Warpstone meteorite.
But so the initial part, okay, you're tied into the Purple Hand, but then the rest of the investigations are they're kind of giving you more information to go on, but they're also building a case, because you do have to, at the end of the first section, you will kind of have to put together, a case that, okay, the Skaven exist and they are a threat. And it's kind of funny actually with Wittgenstein, because, well, okay, yes, he is a cultist and he has perhaps been revealed as being a cultist, but he is also a fairly reliable character in terms of he has a high amount of prestige. So I know now my party put together a convincing enough case based on putting together the rest of the things, but they also duffed in Wittgenstein in a sewer.
Yeah.
So they actually did themselves out of some evidence score based on doing him in, because they're like, well, he's a cultist, so let's just oh well, he tragically didn't make it out of the sewers.
Oh, so sad. Another good section, I thought, kind of finding out a little bit more about him. It can be that one my players found a little bit tricky to track him down. They didn't push quite hard enough to get into certain places. And they actually figured it out, though, and that was fine. I gave them another clue to direct them towards him, and that was good. After that, you have the public autopsy of the Skaven, which my players had quite a lot of fun with.
I guess it's kind of reminiscent of the the Edinburgh kind of dawn of modern medicine, body snatchers, medical public autopsy type thing, only with a sample of, what did they call it, Raticus dominus or something, or
Raticus something other
pseudo Latin giant rat thing.
Classical. One of my players was becoming a basically a scholar with an emphasis on Skaven.
Yeah.
And so he used that as his kind of in there, and basically was very interested in teaming up with someone there. So they bought into that one quite a lot, and basically protected Eunice Hash, who was the professor there, quite hard from bad stuff happening to her. And we're quite frustrated with these guys have clearly done it. And they're going, there's no proof. They're like, why does everyone always want proof?
I mean, those guys are a pretty low social class, so I don't know if proof's strictly necessary.
True. Ratus homunculus.
Ah.
But and a good section, fun, kind of gives you a little bit of insight into what's going on. Again, kind of sets up one of the academics in the city as being a yellow fan guy, who they ended up quietly taking care of in my game.
Yeah, I guess for me it was the interesting thing of I know we've discussed the strata, the social strata, and the status, but I think they were a little more wary of doffing in someone who was gold rather than say if he was brass or something like that. I think they'd be more inclined to, dark alley and a stiletto.
Yeah. Then next section is you come basically there's a bunch of thefts around the city, which end up pointing you towards people destroying evidence of the Skaven and items that might be used against the Skaven, and ultimately pointing you towards the Brass Keep, which is kind of the next big section. You also have the assassinations that happen that you can kind of track down. So it's a bunch of Skaven doing stuff. And as you play through it, you're gradually revealing the Skaven, what they're up to in the city, what they're doing, kind of how they act. And it's good stuff. It's a good section of the adventure.
I especially liked the section. So there's two sections I really, as you're kind of moving towards the Skaven reveal and investigating what's going on. The two sections I really liked because of the kind of the horror of it. There's two sections. One where you've got the Black Hunger is where a bunch of Skaven have been locked into a chamber, and Skaven have really fast metabolism. So if they don't eat, then after a certain bit they start to go totally ravenous and crazy, and they literally start to eat each other themselves. Each other just go totally out of their mind, uncontrollably attacking each other, and narrating that and describing that and just showing players that I really enjoyed. And then there's another bit as well where an entire village has been kidnapped for slaves, and doing the whole, there's still meals on the table, and then, revealing you go into the barn and the horror that clearly all of these people have had their eyes plucked out because, well, what are the slave in the Under Empire where it's totally dark and need eyes for?
Yeah.
Nice, particularly if you want to go down that angle, because like a lot of WFRP, okay, I know it's grim, but I don't know that Forte is that grim. It's certainly not that gritty in terms of getting your character done. It can be pretty harsh in terms of the mutations and stuff, but like that was a point where I was like, this is grim.
Absolutely. My players refused to do those last two sections, the Missing Village and the Griffin. They were just like, we're going to the Brass Keep. We're fed up waiting, And I was like, fine. Like, I'm not going to fight you on it. If that's what you guys want to do, you'll have a little less evidence. That's grand. We'll go do this then. And because they'd gotten enough evidence at this point that they figured out it's definitely the Brass Keep we need to go to. And I was
Okay, I guess I didn't have my party fighting me on that because it's like, look, guys, it'll take time to. This is the Cardsburger land. Okay, yes, they are a bannerman, but they're fairly high ranked, and it would be disrespectful to just rock up and go, "Yo, this is my authority." So we're gonna clear it with them. Get you guys here while that's happening. Go take a look at this stuff.
No, but I had one players go, no, we're going. I was like, okay, I'm not gonna fight you on this. I'm not gonna argue with you on this one. That's what you want to do. That's cool. But they were like, yeah, we're just going. He was too thirsty to know what was going on in the Brass Keep, basically.
Sure.
I was like, okay, well, off we go to the Brass Keep. And that's kind of, there's an extended section where you're doing just investigating, you're figuring stuff out, and it starts to build to a climax. And the Brass Keep is the start of the build. So you head there, and the Brass Keep is this weird feint in some ways. That you think this is going to be the climax of the adventure as a player, I think, and it's not. It's in fact it's nearly a red herring. It's not exactly a red herring, but it's nearly a red herring. And it's certainly a red herring for a bunch of the Skaven, just not the guys in charge. And you go to the camp, and you basically interact with the people in the camp. You figure out someone's up to some dodgy stuff, and then the big giant Skaven attack happens. And you mostly watch what happens, because it's made abundantly clear to you that if you go up to the Brass Keep, you're in serious trouble. So I thought that was interesting.
I enjoyed the idea of that section, and I think my players got on board with it. But It did feel a little kind of railroady and narration-y.
Yeah, definitely. It is. You go and you watch stuff happen, which is fine.
I mean, that is essentially the role that you've been given as well, because the
Yeah.
picket are like, hey, we need somebody to go check it out. Like, can you guys go scouting and check it out? It's not like go capture this thing out of the fort or something.
Yeah.
It is go scout, and I guess it could partially be the issue of a party of adventurers could stand in the middle of a small army and just
Yeah.
do everybody and probably be fine. So maybe
And not so much against Nurgle's Rot, though. Not so much against Nurgle's Rot.
well that's it. And if people do sally fort out of the fort, you just right 100 in nearly every stat. Right, let's go.
Yeah. Well,
These
that's
guys
it.
are literally ancient warriors. They have crazy stats and crazy armor, and even seeing them will have you making checks against corruption.
Absolutely. Interesting one as well, because it's where Sigmar gets the crown of sorcery, which is that doesn't really come up a lot, but that's his original provenance of the area.
I guess if people aren't familiar with the lore, Brasskeep is basically a fortress full of Nurgle worshippers who, it's been basically they've been held up there for the last 500 years
Yeah.
because people are like, yeah, look, it's not worth clearing them out of it, and if we did clear them out of it, we'd have to take over the cursed fort. So let's just leave them there.
Yeah. So there's this massive Skaven attack into it that gets slaughtered by them, which is kind of the indication to the players that probably not for us to go in there. It's just a little bit of discouragement. It's full of Nurgle.
And I guess the entire thing is that it was one, a weapons test, and two, a means of wiping out a significant part of a smaller clan so the bigger clan could take them over.
Yeah. Which is a bit of a puzzler for the players. They're like, why are they just throwing away their troops? They're just getting slaughtered. And that's, kind of interesting. And yeah, I thought pretty good section. A very much you're kind of watching what's happening. Which is
I think it's okay once you don't drag the arse out of it. If you keep the pace up and keep it moving, and then I think it's fine. And that's what I tried to do when I ran it, was just keep the pace up, and don't players were investigating tunnels and stuff. And okay, if that had kept going, then but you kind of go, well, this isn't just one. The mine entrance you found isn't just the one. There's a half a dozen around here. Okay, well, we'll sabotage this one. Okay, grand. And then you see the next one. You're like, okay, well, if there's half a dozen, maybe it doesn't make any difference if I sabotage tunnel entrances. They could be here all day. I think you could get really bogged down in that section. I think it would suffer.
Yeah, keep it moving. Keep it moving once they're in the bit where they're just there to observe what's going on. And what they do figure out, though, is that there is this massive bolt of energy that comes from a neighboring peak. And they're like, oh, look, that's where they are. And they had gotten clues as well that it was an abandoned dwarven carrack that the Skaven were outfitting themselves from. And then they figure out, oh, it's Carrick's gig. Let's head there. And you make your journey there. And there's some goblins. And otherwise, it's not crazy interesting. It's more you just go there. And you might chat with the goblins. And that's about it, right?
Yeah, my group parlayed, and that was fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, here's some stuff. Here's some booze and some, trippy mushrooms or something. And the goblins are true to their word and let you through.
Yep. I might just kill their troll.
I mean, yeah, this is the one section where it could easily be a genocide,
Yeah. No, they just killed the troll and moved on. It was just like, yeah, we're not dealing with this.
Sure.
I
kind of feel that some things like that are nearly the pad time, particularly with
the
troll itself. The stats aren't that. Maybe in book 2 it would have been like, yeah, okay, but in book 4,
what I think is they got a bunch of freelancers in to run basically to write some side content to give you things to do. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. However, it does come at the expense of the final section, which I have some issues with.
Yep.
So the climax of the adventure is in Carrick's gig. And what it's meant to be like is it's meant to be like the evil lair of a James Bond villain.
Essentially, yeah.
Malice Manrek is Goldfinger.
And
not
even like a modern James Bond villain. We're talking like Moonraker
No,
John here.
yeah, it's Moonraker or Thunderball or something like that. It is, you are attacking the crazy base of the
I mean, it's inside a mountain, not a volcano. But we'll give them a small pass for that.
Yeah, it's Blowfield. You're attacking Blowfield's base or somebody's base, and it's their crazy base full of their crazy minions. And I'm shocked Grace Jones isn't here to fight you. But it's like that's the ending of the book.
Yeah.
And my issue with it is that my players see the Carrick, see the giant gun, and go, let's climb up the outside of the Carrick and get him right at the top. And I'm like, that's very logical.
Yeah.
And that was their approach. They went around to the side and they climbed up and they got into the third floor rather than the fourth floor. I was like, okay, the fourth floor is not a goer. The third floor you do. So you at least do some of the dungeon. And it gets very hand-wavy for a GM about what's going on. And it's kind of like, yeah, there's guys here, but we haven't detailed everything. There's just stuff going on. And it gets a little bit loosey-goosey. Because you just don't...
I guess my players engaged with it, but I think that was more their need for completeness.
Yeah.
And also, I tried to emphasize that the more disruption they do to the plans, the easier it'll be, rather than just rocking. If they just rock up and try to blow up the cannon, then an entire fort is going to come down and it's not going to go well. So they were at pains to try and explore it everywhere, and any chance for disruption, freeing slaves or wrecking up furnaces, something like that they would do.
Yeah.
But I could absolutely see a party going, yeah, let's just scale up the outside of the mountain and rock in.
Yeah, and you're not going to tell them no, because why can't you do it? There's no reasonable explanation why you can't.
But the book kind of mentions this might help foil plan, but it doesn't actually give any means for that to happen. Not even like... okay, well, at the end, Malice is here with his big rat ogre and 10, say, elite storm vermin.
Yeah.
And then, if you have done A, then there are 2 more storm vermin. If you did B, then there's 2 less. If you caused a slave uprising with the clan mange guys, or even a bunch of the humans and dwarves or whatever that are kept there are now the end fight will be easier. Like that would be very easy to do, and that I felt was a deficiency, I guess, in the final section. There's no real benefit for actually doing that completeness. Like you don't really. The game itself, the book itself, doesn't seem to give you any benefit for clearing the fort than just rocking in and blowing up the cannon. I mean, I did kind of reward my players by, okay, well, here's a couple of friendly NPCs who are along for the ride.
Absolutely. The other thing is the final fight, right?
Yeah.
They give you a map of the multiple layers of the skig.
Yeah.
It's okay.
There's no scale or way to get between the levels.
Yeah, but that happens. The bigger problem for me is when you get to actually, okay, and now we're having the fight at the cannon.
Yeah. There's nobody
Nothing
getting
interesting is done with it.
A stray bullet isn't causing light of arcing to electrocute somebody, or
there's nothing interesting happening on it.
Yeah.
And it's a multi-layered fight, but nothing is done with the fact that it's multi-layered.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing should be you fighting up gantries on top of the cannon as Malice Manrak basically harasses you as you go up. And there should be a whole thing about, I one of the things I did for my one is I had a bunch of storm vermin on pulleys with ropes, and they had big giant rats up on the gantries to run back and forth, to drag them back and forth and up and down. And so the basically the storm vermin would like drop down and make attacks and then bounce back up. And so you at least kind of give a little bit of. Now we can't just move up and melee attack these guys to death. We've got to basically climb up. We've got to fight our way up as we climb up the cannon, fighting bad guys as we go, you know. And maybe we basically grab onto a storm vermin and we climb up the rope or something like that. And so there was nothing like that done with it. So as a set piece, it falls down. It's a great concept. It's a James Bond ending to a film, but it's not actually kind of implemented terribly well, you know? And it's like, I was very disappointed with the
opportunity.
That the map used was grand for walking around the place, but for the battle map bit, it was very inadequate. Now, 3D maps are hard in battle maps anyway, but I really felt that, you needed to do more with that, you know? And that disappointed me. That disappointed me quite a lot. That it was a good idea, and nothing is kind of done with it mechanically. That the fight is kind of like just he's there with some guys, and it's like he's gonna get one rounded. You know, he's melee polearm 70. That's not good enough. You know.
Yeah. I mean, I spruced him up a bit, and same with
absolutely
some of his henchmen, but you have to. If he's got enough cover, he is potentially a threat because he's a pretty good shot. And, he's got a few doohickeys as well.
But that's why I think the whole fight should have taken place in a 3D environment where he's peppering you with fire, moving up the thing, and his engineers, and his Skaven storm vermin are holding you up. So it becomes hard to get to him. Whereas it's really not, you know?
And it's also, if you need to get to him, not just to take him out, that he is about to fire the weapon, then, that could make that all the more compelling. I guess for me, one thing that I tried to do, and the fact that the players were exploring the fort as well, was that, they have the Skaven bell that, like, okay, well, they count up to 13, and players may or may not know the significance of the number 13, but that periodically when the players were, arsing around, that you hear the bell ring, and suddenly the whole fort, everybody, the guy who's leaning on a spear is suddenly up and, moving stuff, and the whole thing goes, so I was building towards that, but then at a certain point it was like, I'm at like 8 and the players are ready to go, so the thing isn't to be fired for another like 5 hours. What do I do now?
Absolutely. It's difficult to make the climax ready to go, because the players are going to try and interrupt it, but they're not just going to wait till the last second. And there should have been some stuff to make it like, we wait till the last minute, then we attack. There's a reason to do that, And I think it's a great, as a concept, it was very good. As implemented, it fell down a little bit. And, basically,
in terms of the climaxing as well, the players either manage to stop the shot or don't manage to stop the shot. If they don't manage to, then the Empire's in a lot of trouble because there's warp stone all over the place. Presumably they do, then the players escape down the edge of the mountain and then get rescued by an airship. This kind of more narrated than anything, because
there's no mechanics there for
narration. I had no idea how to do it, how to pull it off.
There's no mechanics there for it. There's no kind of skill challenge thing. You need to get this many SL to get down safety. No, just make a run. And that is again a weakness. I mean, this fate points are given out for a reason. And it's it's kind of like that. There's a thing here, right, that I've only just noticed on rereading it because I'm currently running Empire in Ruins, and there's a mirror there, which you see a pair of human eyes looking into it. They won't discover until Empire in Ruins, but the mirror was an enchanted spying artifact employed by one of the 9 Eyes of Siege.
Yep. I totally forgot about it. I will.
Is that brought up at all?
No, when the
No.
players encounter that alternative mirror in the second, when they encounter that mirror in the second one, I will give them a roll to remember, and then go, "Oh, you remember seeing a mirror like that in Malice Manrak stuff?" Or maybe one of them, because the players stole everything that wasn't nailed down, then they maybe be able to go into their bag and find the other mirror. That's correct. That's what I intend to do when my players get to that bit. But I totally forgot about it when they went through that bit.
I guess I know which one of the 9 Eyes that would be, but kind of. I'm not sure that ever came up in the Oak. Like, this feels like, oh, that's a cool plot hook. That get picked up at all? What? Oh, Anyway.
Yeah. In general, I mean, we're talking this down. In general,
I
really enjoyed this book.
It's good.
I thought the first half of it was very strong. The climax with work, I think it works. If you just run it as written, I could see it being quite weak.
I think it gets a bit too fluffy towards the end, and it doesn't deliver the set. Like, Death and the Reich's climax, you basically dungeon crawling through the castle.
Yeah,
I quite like. It's a bit long, and the final fights are a bit underwhelming. Between mechanics and between terrain, they've a bad
3 rounds. Do this thing. Yeah, that guy's dead in
that
1.
Guy's
Never mind
dead
2. And you're
rounds.
saying that like 2 rounds he does nothing. Right.
I'll tell you this much, right? They have a bad habit of going, an interesting fight is 2 NPCs in a 20-foot room.
Yeah.
They've a bad habit of doing that. And she's 40 weapon skill. What happens? Well, the dual wielder guy goes up and minces her.
Well, I mean, the wizard who hasn't really put many points into melee goes up and minces her. Never mind.
Yeah.
Never mind the melee focused character.
I'll have a guy who's basically dual wielding fist weapons go up and go, yeah, here, 20 damage, 20 damage. How's he looking? Well, I said, well, he was dead about 15 damage ago. But other than that, okay. And it's a bad habit for it in the game of here's the big climatic fight. And they're dead. It is disappointing from that point of view. Occasionally happens with it.
So some of the fights clearly have taken notes on board, and they are a lot tougher. But in general, you still do need to make a pass through of it and beef things up, because otherwise it's just and that beefing up could even be, I'm going to throw in a handful of minions here, because otherwise it's not going to work. And I'll ignore the durations here, because we're for fight last 10 rounds. What are you talking about?
No, 15 rounds into the fight. Okay, it's been over for 14, but go on. Like, there should be stuff like the thing is, for me, this fight was an opportunity to do something 3D where maneuvering around the cannon is a big shtick part of the fight. And I think that's your opportunity to do something a bit different, to go, the reason this is hard is you can't just run up to the guy and melee him.
Yeah.
They're too hard to get to. And if you do that, I think you can make something quite interesting, even if the bad guy doesn't need to be, okay, we'll buff him up to 100 weapon skill and we'll give him plus 6 SL in successful tests, and there you go, now he's dangerous,
Yeah.
Whereas if you go, well, actually, he's not super dangerous in melee, he's competent in melee, but the problem is getting to melee him. That becomes kind of the puzzle. And a bit more of that in the last fight, I think, would have added a huge amount of value to it as a set piece. Because otherwise, I did a bit and my players said, that was a really cool fight. And it was mostly me basically thinking about making stuff up to cover for that. And one of the things about Cubicle 7's WFRP is their adventures are generally very to pretty good. And it's what falls down is they don't really supply interesting tactical fights. The fights are kind of there, and they're generally a bit perfunctory. And I've got a party that likes a tactical fight.
Yeah.
And they kind of find it a bit. I had a player quit over it. Like it's just not. I just don't find it interesting, man.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's okay. That's fair, you know. And that's very much a criticism I'd make of it. You know, that
Do you
third.
think it's enough to spoil the book overall, or would you still rate it highly?
No, I still
highly
rate it as a very good adventure. But
Hmm.
I find that as a climax, it was lacking that aspect of it to make it feel like there was a challenge, a desperate struggle to stop them firing the gun. I think it gets a bit it's not as it's not like it's very challenging in RPG is very difficult because different players and player groups have different levels of competency. But I do think that it's not a tactically it's not the finale is not interesting. From a story point of view, it is quite interesting and it's really cool. But I would have worked harder to kind of put together a tactical situation where Malice Manrak can rant at the party. Give them a reason why he does the rant at the party and why they don't just shoot him. You know? And that was kind of I would have done a bit around that, basically just to make that to give the players that opportunity to confront the bad guy before they fight him.
No, Mr. Witch Hunter, I expect you to die.
Yeah, I mean, he like there's a whole basically spiel there for him, you know, when he talks to you, and like he's meant to reveal his evil plan, you know, and they pretty much figured out he's going to blow up the moon, but like he still should have his opportunity to tell them, you know, how he's going to blow up the moon, how he's such a genius, you know, and yeah, there you go.
Okay, did you run much out of the companion? Did you find much use in the companion book?
In the companion, let me take a look.
I mean, the companion book, like with a lot of them, it's not essential. I did find it kind of nice. It does add a few extra things. You've got a lot more detail on the Skaven, just going on about like how the Skaven work and the history of the Skaven. It's got a detail of a whole pile of the clans and a whole pile of extra NPCs that will be in the clans. And kind of their weapons and magic and different monsters and stuff that they'd have. From that point of view, I found it quite interesting. And running it on Foundry, it was nice because you can just it's just an extra pile of guys. You can throw them in. You go, oh, actually, they're looking at the stats for that guy. Yeah, okay, he's pretty good. I'll use him instead of a standard storm vermin. I'll use a death vermin instead. Cool, great. Now, I guess there are specific guys from specific clans, so if you throw plague monks in, then the questions are going, why is there plague monks here? But hey, you know, sometimes it can just be you're looking for the stat blocks. From that point of view, it was nice. I don't know that it strictly came up a lot, but if you wanted to use the Skaven in a wider sense in your campaign, this would be a good book for you to have. It also goes a lot more into the Yellow Fang itself. That I did find quite useful.
Yeah. What I used a bit of was Hans Graber, the Gravelord.
Yeah. Just the side adventure. You've been running the Gravelord stuff.
I have been. Yeah.
Which one is this? Is this the second part or third part of it?
This is.
I think it's the second. Because this is the Return of the Gravelord is what it's called. Now, I mean, the Return could be the third one.
I think it's,
as we all know from the original Star Wars trilogy, the Return is the third one.
there's the bit initially where he kills the kind of prologue in Death in the Reich, where he kills the priest, and then he shows up in Flying Death Skulls.
Sure.
And they kill him, and this is the one set after Flying Death Swords. You know, so it's kind of a little mini campaign of him being basically the jerk. You know.
I guess I think I used some of the weapons. I think I used the NPC Glimbern Flintbeard, who's a ghost, but he's a dwarven ghost, so it's okay. Other than that, I didn't use a lot, but it was nice to be able to figure out more in terms of how the clans and stuff worked.
Yeah.
So I'd say valuable, but not essential.
Absolutely.
All right, any closing thoughts on the Horned Rat?
Worth it. Absolutely worth it if you're playing the Enemy Within. Much better than something rotten in Keislev. Very good investigative scenario for the first half. Climax leaves a bit to be desired in terms of a tactical challenge, or it's not. It needed more word count. It needed a bit more time taken with it. It's kind of outlined rather than
part
detailed.
of the problem is maybe it's too much of an adventure, because to me it's nearly like it is two halves, because the first half with all the investigating is really interesting and it's nearly a book in itself, and then it's like, okay, we got to bring this to a conclusion, and it seems a little rushed,
and could have done with knowing what you were going to do in this one. I think you could have done some stuff to make it more obvious that the Warpstone meteorite was special in a weird way in Death in the Reich, and tie that in a bit better.
Yeah.
You know? Because Escape wanting it because it's giant, just a giant pile of thing, that makes sense. But
I mean, look, if you look at the Warpstone world, none of it makes sense, because it's like, oh, let's get this Warpstone. Like, there's literally a place called the Warpstone Wastes or the Warpstone Deserts.
Yeah. Absolutely.
On the way to what's the fake fantasy China? I should know this. I've been playing Warhammer 3. Total Warhammer 3. Cathay, that's the one. It's literally a desert full of warpstone there. So, maybe a pile of warpstone isn't that big of a draw. But anyway, I think maybe some reinforcement to tie it in might be good. But I don't think any of my players picked up on it too much. But it worked. And also, you see some of the rat ogres have a giant lump of warpstone on their fist. And it's like, well, is warpstone rare or not? But, hey, well, forget that incongruity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, overall, I really enjoyed the book, and I don't have no other points. I did think that, yes, the first half of the book is by far the strongest. Very, very much enjoyed running that bit with the players investigating, because it's nicely done. Like, players are figuring out what's going on, but they're not sure about what's going on, and I think that makes for a good investigation. If everything was wrapped up in a nice little package, it would be naff. If players are like, we think we know what's going on, but they're not sure, I think that's really nice. And for me, that's the whole spirit of what they're going to go for with the commission and the investigation. And yeah, I did think the end is a little weak, and maybe it's something people could work on themselves. For Foundry support, I very much enjoyed the Foundry support.
Yeah, Foundry support was great.
It made it a lot easier to run.
Oh, absolutely. It saves you a bunch of time, saves you a bunch of effort, saves you a bunch of inputting NPCs, and it makes it much quicker to modify them if they're already in. You can basically go, okay, let's just delete that 30 and replace it with a 60.
Yeah.
You know?
Throwing an extra bit of weapon skill, throwing a few talents, bam, 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 done.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. Well, if you have any thoughts on the Horned Rat, you can hit us up on our social media or join us on our Discord. But for now, this party's over.
Thank you for listening to The Adventuring Party. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, you can head on over to SpeakPipe and drop us a line. Or you can join us on our Discord server, where we keep the party going after hours. Otherwise, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, or Twitter, or you can email the hosts at party@theadventuringparty.net. The Adventuring Party is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike version 3 license, but you probably knew that already. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and look forward to seeing you back here next week. Goodbye.